Jane Velez-Mitchell for Unchained TV. We have total team coverage for day 2 of the Smithfield trial, the trial of 2 animal activists who could go to prison for 11 years for going into a factory farm in Utah and taking out 2 sick piglets. We're going to go straight out to the courthouse in Utah. Carla, Cabral, you're standing by. Bring us up to date. What is the very latest?
Well, it's been a very exciting morning for sure. The entire testimony this morning was from Special Agent Chris Anderson of the FBI. And there was a lot of talk about how they did their investigation, how they received the video, a lot of talk about the video. Unfortunately, the jury is unable to see this video that everybody keeps talking about. So it was very exciting to get to delve into the mind of the FBI and how they found out about what happened, who they spoke with, who spoke to them, and what conclusions they came to based on that information.
Now, one quick thing I want to ask you, is the jury walking in past all the demonstrators who were there?
I don't believe that the jury is seeing any of the demonstrators. We have been instructed not to be in front of the courthouse during the exact times that we expect the jury to come in and to leave. So we are respecting those boundaries, and we are only doing things at different times.
Thank you, Carla. You're amazing out there live. Lisa
May I ask
Bloom.
a question?
Yes,
May
absolutely.
I ask Carla, I'm really interested. This is Lisa Bloom. Hi. I'm really interested in what you just said, that the FBI agent talked about the video. Can you, because that might be opening the door, right? So can you tell us more about what the FBI agent said about the video?
Absolutely. So the FBI agent Chris Anderson said that they used that video in order to identify Wayne and Paul, and they talked a little bit about the methods that they used with that video in order to identify the defendants.
Okay, thank you.
And now we're so honored to have Lisa Bloom and an incredible team. Lisa Bloom, famed attorney. We both used to work at Court TV. In fact, I used to fill in for her. And we're so honored to have her, as well as Marina Bolotnikova, who is a reporter for The Intercept. We're going to introduce the rest of the panel. But Maria, bring us up to date. What is the testimony happening right now inside that Utah courthouse?
Hi, yes. Trial started yesterday. It went from, it started in the afternoon and went for most of the afternoon. I think yesterday overall went quite well for the defendants. There wasn't, one thing that the defense is trying to do is show that the piglets that were rescued from Smithfield would have been worthless to Smithfield because they were sick, and as the defense is arguing on the verge of death. There were some really interesting moments where Wayne Hsiung, who's one of the defendants and is also representing himself, was cross-examining a Smithfield manager, attempting to ask questions to get at the fact that a lot of Smithfield's piglets end up in the trash. They have dumpsters outside of factory farms for this purpose, and the judge shot down every attempt he made to ask about that. However, later in the afternoon, defense attorney Mary Corcoran was cross-examining the Utah State veterinarian, Dean Taylor, I believe is his name, who is a witness for the state. He said that a piglet of the age of the 2 piglets that the 2 defendants took would have been worth $42.20 each to Smithfield in 2017. And Mary Corcoran cross-examined him and said, and got him to say that he had first of all, he's not an expert in pigs. He's an equine doctor, and also that he has never examined or had any experience with the two piglets in question here, and that many, about 15%, according to the USDA, of piglets die before weaning, and that is an interesting point that they're going to try to continue to pursue.
You mentioned a particular moment. We've got that moment. Let's play it, and then we're going to analyze it on the other side.
You testified that piglets, I just want to restate your testimony previously, that piglets have value in Smithfield, correct?
Yes, they do.
Okay. Does this include piglets that end up in a dumpster outside?
Again, Your Honor, objection. We've gone over this 3 or 4 times.
Sustained.
And piglets that are discarded into dumpsters. Presumably these piglets are not sold for meat,
I
correct?
think this is the 5th time I've stood and objected to this question.
Your Honor, I'm just trying to establish.
It's sustained.
Okay.
I don't want you mentioning that again.
Okay. Your Honor, I'm just trying to establish the value of piglets, which is an element of theft.
Sustained the objection.
Your Honor, may I approach?
No.
No.
Ask the question.
Wow. So, Lisa Bloom, I've never heard of when a lawyer says, may I approach, the judge saying no.
They do sometimes. They just want to move it along. They don't want, a hold up. But, Wayne, who's not an attorney, is doing a very good job. Because
he is an attorney, actually.
Oh, he is an attorney?
Yeah.
Okay, well, he's doing a very good job, and it's very hard. You're up there, you have a whole line of questions written out, you're ready to go, and then the judge sustains objections, and you can't go down that line, and it's very frustrating. So I think he's doing a nice job, even though, of course, the judge is cutting him off. The judge only wants a very narrow set of facts coming into this trial. That's clear, right? The judge is not going to allow the video in, not going to allow Wayne and Paul to explain why they were there. So they're only allowing this very narrow set of things in, but still, I think Wayne's doing very well.
So I want to get our other panelists' reactions to all this. Donny Moss of TheirTurn.net, Gwenna Hunter, founder of Vegans for Black Lives Matter, and avid trial watcher, Mick Davoudian. Gwenna, you've been following this trial from the beginning, reading about it as well. What is your reaction to how Wayne is being treated in court? Oh, unmute yourself. You're muted.
It just feels like such, it feels like a true setup. It feels like they've made their mind up. They've decided, and I hope that's not the case. As I was listening to the judge's tone, and I'm an energy person, so as I was feeling the tone of the judge's voice, something popped in my head. I wondered, do judges or townships, are they able to get donations from major organizations such as a Smithfield? Because sometimes, almost like in a political situation, when a president is promising something, and then all of a sudden they get a huge donation while they're running for president from animal ag organization. All of a sudden they're for this when they were against it prior. I just wonder the whole conspiracy and the setup of this type of situation, because it really feels like they have made up their mind and they're doing all that they can to make sure that nothing comes out that makes them human, that makes what they're saying credible, and that causes no emotion and thought process in the jury.
Well, let me play one more courtroom incident or interaction. Again, Wayne Hsiung, who is defending himself, who is a lawyer, cross-examining the manager for Smithfield. Listen to this one.
So you said previously that you cannot see the piglets inside a farrowing barn because the building is completely enclosed, correct? And there are no windows or curtains. And that's because the piglets need to stay warm, correct?
Yes.
And in the Utah winter, it can get kind of cold, even in the desert, right?
Yes.
And the piglets probably need to be held in 80 degrees.
Your Honor, I think the line of question we're going down is leading us toward farm management practices. And I think our focus is just on whether or not the animals respond.
Your Honor.
What's your foundation? I mean, what do you...
Your Honor, what we're trying to get at is that the likelihood that the defendants would have taken a piglet from a gestation barn, when gestation barns are inappropriate places for a piglet to live, partly because they're far too cold, right? They're open to the elements, is relevant evidence to determine whether there was either the intent to remove a piglet from a gestation barn, or we actually did remove a piglet from a gestation barn. In other words, the conditions inside the barn are illustrative of whether defendants had the intent or did actually commit the theft inside a gestation barn.
And I think this is beyond direct, Your Honor.
It is not sustaining the objection.
So again, I have to go back to Lisa, and then we'll get the other panelists. As an attorney, what do you make of this?
So this is great. Okay. I mean, yes, the objection was sustained, but Wayne got to say all of that in front of the jury, right? So normally you don't get to make these kind of arguments in front of the jury. You have to go to a sidebar, or you do it when the jury isn't there. And Wayne, I think very wisely, is making his argument, and he's talking about how cold it is, and then whether they had the requisite intent. And, juries, their little ears are always listening. They're perked up, right? They're listening. And what juries also don't like is when information is being kept from them. So here Wayne is presenting himself very calmly and professionally as somebody who's trying to get some information in, and he's not being allowed to get it in, but he got to explain why. So that's giving the jury information, and I really like the way he handled that.
And here is the judge Jeffrey Wilcox, who is presiding over this trial. So let's get response now from TheirTurn's Donny Moss and then Mick Davoudian. Donny?
Look, the jurors are humans. And when the judge continues to block Wayne's sort of thoughtful, measured testimony, or line of questioning, I should say, I can't help but think that the jurors are going to say, what does the judge want to hide here? Yes. What do the prosecutors want to hide here? It seems to me like the prosecution and the judge are doing themselves a disservice by not allowing Wayne and the other defense attorney to just say what they want to say. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. That's just my gut feeling based on someone who's been in a jury before. So look, I think it's terrific. I mean, I think I would just echo what Lisa said, that it's terrific that Wayne was able to make his point after the objection was sustained. So yeah, kudos to Wayne.
Yeah. And to your point, Mick Davoudian, you had pointed out in a comment that as an avid trial watcher, you were very interested in the questions the jurors were asking.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, so that was a positive to me yesterday. At some point, I think one of the jurors asked something about why does the industry not have staff after hours to care for the animals? And that, to me, I mean, indicates at least a very basic level of empathy. So I think that's good news. And then, of course, the other thing that happened yesterday is I was really, really negative on the whole thing. Donnie asked you a question, and then Lisa said something. So I think overall, it's really difficult to watch because it's obvious how biased the judge is. I don't know if you guys noticed what the judge did yesterday. Honestly, I don't think in all the years of watching, court dramas, I've ever seen anything like that. I think it was at some point right at the beginning of the questioning, and Wayne kind of to ask a question of a witness. The judge just basically snapped at him and said, irrelevant. And then I remember seeing that the judge kind of locked eyes with the prosecutor immediately, as if like they both knew this was weird. So maybe Lisa can explain if that's weird or not. To me, it sounded like it was weird and looked like they thought it was weird. And then the judge immediately said something like, oh, and I'm going to sustain my own objection, which I thought was bizarre for a judge to also act as a pseudo defense attorney.
And thank you for that. Everybody, don't touch your keyboard. It crackles. Thank you. And Lisa, yes, the judge sustained his own objection. Whoa.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that can happen. It doesn't happen very often. And, but this judge, I don't like what you just pointed out about him locking eyes with the prosecutor either. Judges should at least have the appearance of impropriety. And when they're very connected, eye locked with one side or the other, it's really unfair. And that's another thing that jurors pick up on. But unfortunately, jurors usually want to side with the judge. And if they get the sense that the judge is on one side or the other, that's the side they like to take. The judge is the authority figure in the courtroom who's supposed to be neutral like them. So that's a bad sign, but that's also, you picked up on that. That was very insightful of you. And I suspect some jurors probably did too.
And Lisa, I may be wrong, but I think he even snickered when he said, "I'm going to sustain my own objection."
Yeah.
But I haven't had a chance to watch the video because we can't record it.
Marina, I want to ask you, because you've really covered this trial from the beginning, writing for The Intercept. You've done such an extraordinary job. Let's be real. We're all animal lovers here, okay? But now looking at some comments that are coming in from our just general public, here we go. I thought it was despicable when Wayne asked politely to approach the judge and the judge said no. But we also have, hold on one second. I'm going to go to some of these because I think it's important to get some of the comments in and be realistic about it, so we're not just singing Kumbaya. So let me get this straight. They broke into a food production facility and stole animals, and now they're on trial to be judged for their crimes. I hope they lose. This shouldn't set a precedent. Sick. That's not how you spell precedent. Go ahead, Marina.
Yeah, I would love to address this. So everyone, I think something that's important to understand is that everyone knows these activists took two piglets out of a factory farm. Kind of, we all speaking here know that, everyone knows that, but convicting them of the specific things that they are charged with in court is a very, very different matter. So they are each charged with 2 counts of felony burglary, which each carry up to 5 years in prison, and 1 count of misdemeanor theft. And to burglary, a burglary means that you went into a private building intending to commit a theft or another crime. And that requires the prosecution to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that they went into two Smithfield.
Whoever's touching their computer, please stop. It's crackling. Do not touch your computer. Go ahead. Thank you, Maria.
The prosecution would have to prove that they went into 2 Smithfield structures, the gestation crate facility and the farrowing crate facility, both intending to commit theft, to remove animals from both of those. And whether or not that is, whether or not that's true or can be proved beyond a reasonable doubt is a very different matter from the conversation that's been happening in public in places like the New York Times about the rescue.
Can I ask Marina a question?
Sure.
Marina, that you make such a good point. So do you think Wayne and Paul are going to say they didn't go in with the intent of rescuing piglets? They went in to document the inhumane conditions, but once they were there, they saw the piglets and then took them to save their lives. Is that what we expect them to say? And do we expect them to testify?
I'm not sure. I think that maybe, I think we'll see as more, because they haven't testified as defendants yet. I think that may be the case. And, remember that they removed 2 piglets from a farrowing facility. That's where piglets are kept, not from a gestation crate facility, because that's only a building for the caged pregnant pigs. So, and one of the things that Wayne was saying, I think in one of the clips that Jane showed, is that it doesn't make sense as the burglary in a gestation facility, and there are no piglets to be taken there, and that's huge because because that's 1 count of burglary knocked off, which carries up to 5 years in prison. And it's true that I think that Wayne and members of DXC have said in public statements, like maybe in media stories and stuff like that, sometimes they go into I think they've said various, sometimes contradictory things in public about whether or not they go into factory farms intending to take someone out or not. But that, that doesn't, I don't think that stuff is admissible evidence, right? I mean, and Lisa, you would know more about that than I do.
I think it's admissible because it goes directly to whether they broke and entered with the intent to steal something. So, whether this judge agrees with me or not, but I think it's pretty basic that would be relevant, assuming that they testify. And I assume that they will testify because they want the truth to come out. I think, most criminal defendants don't testify, but I think, I don't know, Jane, what do you think? Do you think they're going to testify?
He did not do his opening statement. Another thing I've never heard of in any trial, but you've covered more trials. I've never heard of where there's no opening statement from one side. But he didn't.
It's coming.
I think it's because it is common. Okay.
I would suspect. So criminal defendants, sometimes they will do that. They will reserve, which means let the prosecution do their opening statement, lay out their case, put on their evidence. And then when it's time for the defense case, then they can give their opening statement. And it's a smart strategy. And the reason why people do is they want to hear the whole prosecution case before they have to start their case. And they can kind of tailor their opening statement to what the prosecution did.
Okay, I want to play a snippet of the prosecution's opening statement and get your reaction, everybody, to the fact that he talks about their cause. The defense can't talk about their cause, but the prosecution can.
Now, the facts in this case will show that, among other things, Milford Valley is home to Smithfield Foods, where they raise pigs. Now, the facts in this case are that early winter months of 2017, probably the month of March, under the cover of darkness, Mr. Wayne Hsiung and Mr. Paul Picklesimer, along with a few others, entered an unauthorized area owned by Smithfield Farms, crossing over a barren fence, making unlawful entry into a barn, and while inside the barn, without permission of the owners, removing 2 of the pigs, stealing them. Now, while they did this, while they committed this crime, the evidence will show they actually filmed themselves doing it, then posted the video online. Now, they had 2 objectives in doing that. The first, of course, was to draw attention to their cause. The second was to engage in a little bit of fundraising, to seek out donations from people online. Now, the evidence will show that after the pigs were removed from Smithfield, the pigs were delivered north to Harriman, Utah, where they stayed at Chain Farms in the Harriman area. The pigs remained there for a little while until eventually they were delivered to Carla.
It seems to me unfair, and I'm going to go to Gwenna on this. Gwenna Hunter, co-founder of Vegans for Black Lives Matter, who joins us today. What is your take on the fact that we can't show the video, but the prosecution can refer to the video and refer to the cause of the defendants?
Again, it feels like this whole process is being incredibly micromanaged to create its own story. And they're using every law and every nook and cranny. And I'm no attorney, but obviously what they're doing is lawful, but it feels very immoral. I found it to be very interesting that the prosecutor said that they posted this online to seek donations. So it's like they're trying to create a narrative, removing the compassion piece and making it seem like this is being done for selfish reasons. But then after that, it sounds like he said that they took the pigs and put them someplace where they were warm and safe, and then they were delivered to a sanctuary where they can be taken care of. That sounds like compassion to me. That doesn't sound like people that are selfish. So I'm hoping that in his statement that he actually did the very opposite of what he intended to do.
So, Carla, I want to go back to you outside of the court. You've been able to get a feel for the community. I've always found...
Sorry, it's noisy out here.
Yeah, it is noisy. But I found as a reporter, a lot of times you go into a situation expecting people to behave a certain way and they behave the exact opposite way. Or, for example, people who are in a certain neighborhood that might be considered very progressive might not be as progressive as you think. People in a neighborhood that might be considered very conservative might not be as conservative as you think. It's always a crapshoot, for lack of a better phrase. What is the sense you're getting of the community there in St. George, Utah?
I'll tell you, it's actually been very interesting. Everybody here has been very kind to us. I don't believe any of us have really encountered citizens that live here acting in any kind of ill manner. So that has been very interesting, because given the audit piece with Curtis Vollmer and Sergeant Woolsey and what happened in Beaver County, we weren't sure what to expect here, because we were told that everybody was against us, that we might even encounter violence. And I think they wanted to instill some sort of fear into us. And what we've experienced has been the exact opposite. When we have talked to people here, they have been very compassionate and very loving with their words. And we really appreciate that. I think the sentiment here is a good one.
Yeah, people are asking, what is the difference between a farrowing crate and a pig gestation crate? Can you bring us up to date on that, Marina? And then we want to get one more question in for Lisa, who has to go off to another trial probably.
Yes. Sorry. Did you ask about the difference between a farrowing and a gestation crate?
Thank you.
So gestation crates are very extremely small cages for pregnant pigs. They are kept in them for almost their entire lives, impregnated over and over again, and have their piglets taken away from them after a few weeks. So they are kept in gestation crates while pregnant. Sorry, I'm getting a call. They're kept in gestation crates while pregnant for the duration of their 4-month pregnancies. They can be, these are things you have to really just to see to believe. It would be like the metaphor I like is if you kept a human in a coffin for their whole life. And farrowing crates are where they are moved when they actually give birth to the piglets. They're pretty similar in the sense that they are really small and restrictive, and they have some additional space for the piglets to be able to nurse. And then when they're done nursing, after a few weeks, they're considered weaned, and they are taken away and moved on to the next stage of the vacuum farm process.
Yeah, you said had to see to believe. Here is just a very 26-second clip of what they're like, and it doesn't tell the story.
So you can see most of these crates are intact, but some of them have literally been busted open because these poor mother pigs are so desperate to escape, they smash their faces up against these steel bars until there's a hole that's broken open, and they had to jury rig this crate door shut with tape. And you can see she's falling on the side of her face. She's got a nasty cut.
All right, Lisa Bloom, the jury has to be wondering, wait, you said they videotaped it, but where's the videotape?
I'm so glad you asked me about that, because I'm ready to jump up and down and yell that the door has now been opened. So for everybody who's just to catch you up on this, so Wayne and Paul wanted to introduce these videos that they took to show why they were there, right? And the judge will not allow it. However, those rulings can always change, and they can change during a trial when the other side opens the door. We now have two really good examples that you've shown us, Jane. One is the prosecutor in his opening statement is talking about the video, and he's actually ascribing a motive to them about the video. They did it for fundraising, like they're in this for some dollars, unlike Smithfield, which makes billions of dollars off of animal suffering, right? So that's number one incident of opening the door. Number two, we heard from Carla about the FBI agent who also talked about the video, that I saw the video and that I used this to identify them. The video is now in this trial. The jury has heard about the video. And I hope that Wayne and Paul and the attorney that's helping them is going to be jumping up and down and saying, Your Honor, the door has been opened. We now want to introduce the video. I really hope that they're going to try. They should try over and over again. When you're a trial lawyer like me, you've got to be very aggressive. You got to keep trying and trying and trying. And maybe the 5th or the 10th time, you're going to win and you're going to get it in. And that's what they should be doing at this point.
Well, I agree with you. They opened the door by mentioning it. So can somebody run in there and tell Wayne, Carla, are you able to run in there and tell Wayne, tell him that now the door's been opened and they can show the videotape. But I just have to ask you one more question before you leave. I know you're going to leave in 1 minute, Lisa. the weird part about this trial is there's so many things that the defense wants to appeal about the procedure, about jury selection, but they keep being told, do it after the trial. Well, after the trial is a little too late to open the door, to take advantage of opening the door.
Yes. Well, unfortunately, that's the way our system works, because there's always the possibility that they will be acquitted, and meaning not guilty. And if they're acquitted, it's over and we don't need an appeal. So courts don't like to do anything unless they absolutely have to. If Wayne or Paul is convicted on anything, then they will have the right to appeal, but it takes a long time. But you can't take up an appeal in the middle of a trial, absent really extraordinary circumstances, which are not present here.
Thank you so much. Lisa, you informed me beforehand you had to leave at 11:30. It's 11:30. We're so honored to have you. Seriously,
Thank you, Jane.
It means a lot.
Thanks for covering this important case. And everybody, if you saw that video that we just saw of the pig and you're disgusted, consider going vegan for a day or a week or your entire life, like I do.
Thank you. And I think we're going to see you for half an hour tomorrow as we continue our trial coverage. Thank you, Lisa Bloom.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. So let me ask you a question. Donny, I mean, that seems open and shut. This is not some obscure legal argument. I've heard that. I've covered a lot of trials. I'm not a lawyer either. But that open the door thing, I mean, can they take the ball and run with that?
I'm obviously not a criminal defense attorney, but even if the judge continues to prohibit the video from being shown, the jurors have now heard on multiple occasions about this video. And again, I do think that the judge and the prosecution are doing a disservice to their own case by not allowing that video to be shown, because the more the jurors hear about the video, the more likely they're going to be, despite what they're instructed to do or not to do at home, the more likely they're going to be to search for this video. They're going to want to see what the prosecution and what the judge are so eager to hide from them. So who knows? Maybe it's not a horrible thing that they're not allowed to show the video to these jurors. I don't know how, here's the thing, and Lisa's not here, but I don't have a sense of how the extent to which jurors pay attention when they're told, don't read the newspaper, don't go online. Do they really do that in this day and age with such easy access to information? If I was a juror, I can't help but think I would go home and search for this video.
Well, this brings us to another question for Carla. I want to ask you, Carla, what is the local coverage? You can unmute yourself and answer this question. Thank you so much. What is the local coverage been like? Now, the clips we're playing for you came from the pool feed, which is provided by St. George News, but they're the pool camera. So, tell us about that, Carla.
Yeah, so there were several outlets that petitioned to be able to be inside the courtroom, and the judge denied any involvement by press except for the St. George News. And we were a little bit concerned about only having that one outlet, but they have done a fantastic job and have been very cooperative in getting footage to us. And the other news channels, I know on Fox, and there have been several news channels that have carried this story, and they have all, in our opinion, been very good pieces with positive stories about what's going on here. So we're very happy with the coverage that we have received with the outlets locally and nationally.
Now, somebody here has just commented, I want to put this up so you could see it. David Savage, I sent the following message in emails and on the Facebook pages and websites of the Washington Post, New York Times, CS Monitor, that's Christian Scientist Monitor, Washington City Paper. Please cover this historic trial in Utah. The judge is gagging the defense and will not let them present their case. This has major repercussions for justice in the United States. RightToRescue.com. Unchained TV will be covering the trial live all week. And thank you for the shout out. Kinder world. So that, right there, obviously mainstream media has its thumb on the scale, because look at the TV commercials. Meat, dairy, pharmaceuticals, primary advertisers. That is the industry that is basically trying to gag Wayne, Paul, all the activists. And right now, the Supreme Court is about to hear the pork industry's challenge to Prop 12 here in California, which bans any products that use these cruel gestation crates from being sold in California. And since California is the 5th largest economy, that will have ripple effects. So, Mick Davoudian, as somebody who has been in the high-tech world, who knows that any news organization who wanted to cover this could figure out a way to cover it wall to wall, what do you make of the fact that the major news organizations are ignoring this?
One word: complicity. I mean, I think, I don't know, I'm not an expert in all media matters, but I think it seems to me they're in cahoots with big industry, be it big pharma or big ag. What's happening is basically, I think, indirectly they're getting money, right? It's not a direct bribe, but advertisements, so on. That's money in the pockets of media. So if you have somebody giving you indirectly money, chances are you're not going to want to say something negative about them. I think that's what's happening. But equally as guilty is really our friends, family, the public in general, because some are suffering from what's called cognitive dissonance. We get that, but majority of them are also complicit because they're intentionally keeping themselves in denial. They know the facts. In fact, it's a charade what we're going through right now with the court. This whole pretending that there's secrets that cannot be revealed in public, hiding this video. Any one of us can go online any moment and come up with a million videos of behind the scenes what's happening in factory farms. These are known facts. They're not secrets, yet they're absolutely treated as if they're secrets. It's comical if it wasn't so sad. But that's what's happening. And the only reason that's happening, and the industry is pretending these are secrets that they're trying to protect, is because the public in general is happy to go along with that charade, with that, fake, with that fake information that is out there, but they pretend they don't know because they don't want to change their way of life. It's comfortable for them to, quote unquote, not know.
Yeah, and this would have been a great way for them to know, but we're here, Unchained TV. We are a global streaming network covering veganism, animal rights. Here it is, Unchained TV. We are a streaming network. This is streaming right now on our website, hub, UnchainedTV.com. It is also streaming on our streaming network, Unchained TV, which is a global streaming network that you can get if you have an Amazon Fire Stick device, if you have a Roku device, if you have an Apple TV device, or you can access it by going to UnchainedTV.com and clicking Watch Now. And you can also get it right here on your phone. Free download. We are a nonprofit. I do not take a salary. We are doing this for one reason: to get the word out, about this. So I was in mainstream media for 40 years, including major networks. I know about the news media blackout, and I know it doesn't have to be a conspiracy. It doesn't take a brain surgeon to look at the commercials and say to yourself, they keep the lights on, I better not start calling them out. So I feel it's really great that the local media in St. George is covering this. And I think that's a breakthrough. I believe in the law of unintended consequences. You never know who might be watching. Meanwhile, let's take another look at one of the pieces of video from inside the alleged crime being committed that the judge will not let the jury see, but the prosecution can refer to without showing. Let's see exactly what that is like.
So Circle 4 is a farm that processes and kills 1.2 million pigs every year.
We're about to head into Circle 4. This is the heart of evil. You can already hear the screams of the mother pigs inside. They're cramped, they're suffering, and we're going to try and expose what's actually happening inside. You guys ready to go? Mm-hmm. Let's put our lights on.
Wow, pretty intense. We've gotten a lot of comments here. Got to ask you, Gwenna, you are an activist who has been on the forefront of this movement. Do you see this trial as a tipping point?
I do. And this is also, as I'm listening to everybody and watching these videos, these clips that you're playing, what I see is fear, and fear from the prosecution, fear from the judge, because all of these tactics wouldn't be necessary if they didn't have fear. And this is a testament to DXC and how powerful they have to be and how powerful they are to have a court system, this whole system, to create all these maneuvers, block all these things, can't see the video, you can't do this, all these objections, all of these things that are being crafted to just make them micromanage the whole conversation about what's going on. I feel like the prosecutors are obviously, and we've said this in many ways, are playing off of the cognitive dissonance of the jurors that they potentially have. As we know, most people have cognitive dissonance when it comes to animals. And some people can see these videos and still have a level of cognitive dissonance because we believe, or most people believe, that animals were put here for us and not here with us. So when people have that type of thought set, sometimes the videos don't have that powerful of effect. But this video, you hear the screaming, you see you can feel the energy. And I don't care where you're from, there's no way you can see a video like this and not feel something and not something unlock or deprogram in your mind that this is cruel and that something about this isn't right. So again, my hat's off to DXC. They're very powerful. Nobody else in the movement is doing this type of work or has this type of bravery. And I just really hope that this plays out in their favor.
I want to say thank you, Gwenna, for that. Carla Cabral, you're there on the ground in Utah. The court is in session right now, right? I've gotten this sense from reporters who have no, skin in the game. I hate that phrase. Let me cancel that. In fact, I do have to say, it's okay to occasionally bring humor. Mick had the best line of all when he said, "Is it speciesist to call this a kangaroo court?" I'm going to give you credit for that one. But Carla, it seems like, they're trying to get through this trial as quickly as possible. And yet these jurors, even though they're not seeing the demonstrations, there is the newspapers, which the judge admonishes them not to look at. But in a small town like St. George, it's going to be pretty hard to avoid the fact that there are dozens or maybe even more demonstrators, protesters walking around. Can you give us a sense of how many people have come to support Wayne and to protest this trial who are in St. George, and how they're being treated by the police? Because we know one of the reasons there was a change of venue is because in the previous county, some of the leafleters and DXC members who were talking to the public were harassed by the sheriff's department, and it was caught on tape. And in fact, there's a lawsuit about it now.
That's what I was stating before, that when Curtis and several other members went just to do regular leafleting during Pioneer Day in Beaver County, they were harassed, and we were all made to feel that our lives might be in danger, that we were definitely going to run the risk of even being killed if we came here. And yet we have over 50 activists from many different states that have come here to support Wayne and Paul. And we have on our vehicles, many of us have written hashtag Smithfield trial that you should be following for up-to-date information about what's going on, and righttorescue.com. And we have that written on our vehicles. So there's no doubt that people in the area are aware and seeing what's going on. And it absolutely has been the case that the prosecution is trying desperately to narrow the window of what can be talked about in court, and they absolutely want no part of the welfare of the animals to get out into the public, that they don't want the jurors to hear anything or see anything involved with the welfare of the piglets that were at Circle 4 Farms. Even though they reference the video, anytime that the defense tries to even say anything remotely close to the conditions at Circle 4 Farms owned by Smithfield Foods, they get shut down. And I do think that our presence here is not a problem. As I said, all of the people that are here and the police that have been here watching over us while we're here have been nothing but kind.
Wow.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And once again, this is the judge, Jeffrey Wilcox, presiding over the trial. Now, as I mentioned before, the New York Times, in one of the cross-examinations by Wayne, who's defending himself, okay, the New York Times came out because actually, after they went into the farm had no idea, since they had thousands of pigs, that these 2 pigs were taken. Then the article came out in the New York Times, arguably the most influential paper and news publication in the world, with a link to the video that Wayne and Paul and the others shot. And also, the New York Times watched the film and said this: in a portion of the film, Mr. Hsiung narrates dead piglets are piled up behind a sow who is wedged into a crate so tightly that she cannot move away from the mess. But a viewer can turn around or turn away from her to see and hear sows in similar straits all around her. And then the New York Times, again, pretty much the most important publication in the world, says the film shows sows with bloody and mangled teats, pregnant sows gnawing on the bars of the narrow stalls they live in until they give birth, and piglets clambering over and nibbling dead siblings. The New York Times also included, and we are also inviting Smithfield Foods on anytime, the company's response. Circle 4 is owned by Smithfield Foods, which was bought in 2013 by Shanghai International, one of China's largest meat processors. A Smithfield spokeswoman said the video had blatant inaccuracies, such as its assertions that the animals shown in it are being starved. Your response to that, Donny Moss?
Yeah. Well, first of all, all of these major meat companies will always say that the footage is taken out of context, and that what we're looking at isn't from our farm. And truth be told, it wouldn't really matter, because all of these industrial factory farms, I hate to use the word farms, look the same. They all have these gestation crates. This particular farm kills or raises 1.2 million pigs a year in 300 different barns, again, sheds on this property. So it's really it's really just dishonest. But what else are they going to say? Part of me thinks that the prosecution should have at the get-go, just to get it out of the way, say, look, some of the things that you're going to see in this video in which the crime was committed are confronting and are upsetting, but that's not what we're here to litigate. We're here to litigate whether or not these crimes were committed. So again, I think the prosecution is can't get out of its own way here. In the opening arguments, the prosecutor stated, made reference to what was the word he used? To their cause, but he didn't say what the cause was. Again, the jurors are going to have to say, well, what is their cause? What is it that we're not hearing here? But Jane, the conditions in those factory farms are regardless of what Smithfield and other companies say, they're way worse than anything that could ever be shown in a video, because the videos cannot show the putrid air and the smells and all of the other things that make life on these sheds horrific for the animals.
And let's take a look at another cross-examination. Again, Wayne Hsiung, who is a defendant, is a constitutional law professor. He is defending himself. Here he is cross-examining the Smithfield manager, courtesy of St. George News.
Mr. Topman, my name is Wayne Hsiung. I'm the defendant and counsel in this case. I'm going to ask you a few questions to follow up on what Mr. Christensen asked you. Is that all right?
No problem.
You viewed a video of the intrusions into farms, I think you said around June or July 2017, correct?
Yes.
But you have no knowledge of this intrusion prior to that video?
No.
Okay. And do you know where you obtained this video?
It was online. It was on Facebook, I believe.
Do you know how Smithfield Foods came into possession of this video or found out about this video?
I don't.
Is it possible this video was disclosed to you by the New York Times?
By who?
The New York Times, a publication?
No, we just Googled it.
Okay, you don't recall the New York Times delivering this video to your company?
No.
In this video that you watched in June or July 2017, you said you narrowed down a time frame
Yes.
for the video to have been actually shot as opposed to published,
Yes.
correct? Okay. Because you watched it when it was published in June or July 2017, correct?
Yes.
In that time frame, that was approximately March of 2017, right?
Yes.
So back in March of 2017, when this incident did happen, you don't have any recollection of realizing the piglets are gone, do you?
No.
And that's probably because there are lots of piglets in Smithfield?
Yes.
In fact, there are thousands of pigs, even at a single farm like yours, correct?
Yes.
And that would mean there are thousands of piglets at Smithfield at this one site.
Yes.
So Mick Davoudian, listening to that, I thought it was very clever how Wayne is bringing in just in a sort of very gradual way through his questioning. In fact, several times the prosecution said, this is testimony in different times that Wayne is trying to bring in the idea that there are thousands of piglets there and who's looking after them.
You know, it goes to what I said earlier. It's really a charade. I mean, these are facts that are known for anybody. Any, human being with half a brain can go online, not only find out and read about these, they can actually look at videos. So, I mean, you can see them with your own eyes. I've actually, I can't say I had the, anyways, it was a very emotional time. I've been outside of this so-called farm. And it was heartbreaking. The screams and the cries of the mother pigs to this day haunts me. In fact, I broke down in tears, and back then I think he was 8 years old. Vegan Evan is the one who came and hugged me and consoled me. Any human being with an ounce of humanity, once they're confronted with this, they cannot deny it. But the fact that it's not in the public forum, big media is not covering it, gives everyone a justification to pretend they don't know.
Yes, it's called plausible deniability. Oh, I didn't know. Well, you didn't know because you were intentionally trying not to know. But I want to go back to Carla, who is live outside the actual courthouse. First of all, bring us up to date on the technicalities. So it's almost noon here. That's an hour later Mountain Time. I'm Pacific Time. So that's almost noon. That's almost 1. It sounds like they're almost going through the lunch break. Because I don't see anybody leaving the courthouse. Bring us up to date on that, because I've covered a lot of trials. Usually they break for lunch around 12:30, 12.
Yeah, actually, they did break for lunch, right? It is almost 1 o'clock now. It was about 11. It was almost an hour ago that the judge broke for lunch. And so they should actually be getting back in. I am right in front of the courthouse, and a few people have walked by, but I'm not sure if there is a side exit where the jury and others might be leaving from.
But out there, out front, is there any way to flip your camera around and just give us a sense of what it's looking like out front?
Yeah, sorry, I moved into the shade because it is actually extremely hot out here, and my phone overheated within minutes when I was standing right out front of the...
Let's see if you could do yeah, there you go. There's the courthouse. There is the courthouse where it's all happening. It's very quiet. And so it's kind of interesting. I had expected a scene where there would be, 50, 60 demonstrators outside. Where are all those demonstrators?
So we actually are, because we're trying to stay away from the jurors, we rented a theater just a few minutes down the street so that all of the activists can watch the trial happening over WebEx. So we're able to join in. Anybody has the right to join on WebEx and watch the proceedings. So all of the activists are gathered together inside the theater, watching everything happen in real time.
Wow. Okay. This is extraordinary. It's a testament to how organized Donny DXC is. I mean, just the idea that Wayne, who is the co-founder of DXC, Direct Action Everywhere, is on trial and representing himself. And while he's not in charge of the organization anymore, he does obviously guide in certain respects. But this organization, which is run almost exclusively by very young people, okay, not just teenagers, but people in their 20s primarily, okay, is so organized and thinks outside the box. And I want to play one thing that they did, which is quite controversial, that apparently did influence the judge. He was not happy that this happened. This is a demonstration at an NFL season opener, and it happened again just, I believe, the day before yesterday at another NFL game.
Oh, now they're going to jail. Two of them, yeah, now they're going to jail. It's on the other hand.
Right to rescue. Right to choose. Right to rescue. Right to rescue. Jump down.
Oh, they're carrying that.
That was so funny. Wow. Where am I coming from? A mile away. I don't know how you're from that side also.
What does the shirt say?
Now I'm going to film.
Where are you going? Where are we at? Oh, what did you get arrested for? What did you do?
How did she get that? Right here. Right here. That's her jacket right there. Her shirt.
Yeah, she took it off.
Okay, that was a protest, one of several. I got to go to Gwen on this. And so do I, one of them, Emick Echo, who was arrested and who did it specifically in protest of this trial, wearing a T-shirt that says "Right to Rescue," because the whole point is this is an open rescue, says DXC, not a crime. That they equated to if you saw a kid in a car foaming at the mouth because she was locked inside, you would break the window to take the kid out, and that wouldn't be a crime. You'd be called a hero.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm listening to the commentary from the people that are recording, and they're giving you everything that you need. They're saying the web, they're like, oh, righttorescue.com. What's her shirt say? Right to rescue. Like I heard the word right to rescue multiple times, which is absolutely genius. I just got to double back on the previous video that you showed where Wayne is talking to, I can't remember the gentleman's name.
The manager. He's the manager of Smithfield.
Okay. I thought this was genius, and I'm going to say this was intentional. If it wasn't, genius anyway. The amount of times that Wayne said the video, you watched the video. Where'd you find the video? You found the video on Facebook. Like he kept saying video. I think he said like at least 10 times. He kept using the word the video. And for me, it's blatant and very subliminal, probably to the jurors, because that to me is creating more curiosity. I think Mick had mentioned this, creating more curiosity and more hunger, because you keep saying the video, oh, you found it on Facebook. So now they know where they can go find this video. And hopefully, and I'm sure, like Mick said, who's not going to look for the freaking video? Somebody's going to look at this video and watch it. And you can't tell me that they're not. And hopefully, yeah. Anyway, I just want to say that was absolutely genius, because the subliminal imprinting of the word video, to me, that works.
It seems like both sides are not playing by the rules. Obviously, there's been a lot of criticism of the judge suppressing the defense, trying to bring up their motive, while the prosecution is able to mention their cause in their opening statement. But by the same token, DXC is not playing by the rules. Instead of just going and just sitting there and letting it take its course, they're pulling what would be called stunts, bringing national attention to these issues, because those games are televised. So I saw many Twitter feeds where whoa, these animal activists have invaded this NFL field with smoke, smoke flares, and they're being dragged off. So they're getting the word out by hook or by crook. But I honestly think it's a shame, Donny Moss, that anybody has to resort to that to gain the public's attention. I personally, as a person who's been in journalism for 40 years, feel that the mainstream media is completely abrogating its duty and responsibility to inform the public by not covering this front and center. With climate change and animal agriculture's impact on the climate, on drought, on habitat destruction, wildlife extinction, human world hunger, and human disease and pandemics, you would think this would be the front page story on the New York Times.
Yeah. And, Jane, to be fair, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post have all covered over the years DXE investigations like the one that they're being prosecuted for now. So it's not 100% black and white, but if they do 1%, they probably only do 1% of what they really should do, given the enormity of the problem. There is so much coverage about climate change. I mean, and then when Greta Thunberg emerged as this sort of icon in the climate movement, there's been so much coverage, but so little of it has even addressed the impact of animal agriculture on the climate. And look, in California, speaking of California, during the droughts, the almonds and tomatoes and avocados and all of these plants, which might consume a lot of water, but not nearly the amount of water that these industrial animal agriculture facilities consume in California. So yeah, Jane, it feels like it's part of this blackout, like what the real, something that each of us can do every day in our own lives to reduce the impact, our own carbon footprint, is to stop eating animals. And you just don't hear that. It's just omitted from the media coverage.
They don't even use the word slaughterhouses. When COVID was sweeping through the slaughterhouses, they called them food processing facilities or meatpacking facilities, but they never said slaughterhouse. But again, I don't want to just be in an echo chamber where we're all saying rah, rah, rah. Okay, Joe Vegetable says people have to eat. It's not possible to be fully plant-based. A lot of things in your homes most likely have animal byproducts in them. I'm gonna toss that one out to Mick Davoudian. Personally, I am 26 years vegan. Go ahead, Mick.
Well, I haven't had any meat since I was a young person, and I'm gonna be 60 in December. So I'm alive. I'm doing great. I've been vegan for the last 10 years. So it's a lie. Again, one of those known lies. Everybody really knows that it's not true. All they have to do is go online. You don't need to be a scientist. You don't need to be an MD to figure this out. You see athletes, you see people from all walks of life, longtime vegans. I don't know how you're surviving, Jane. I really don't know.
Well, actually, I'm always accused of having too much energy. Could you please calm down? You're disrupting by being too loud. So, Carla, getting back to you, do you think the folks there in the community are getting educated about this subject? You said everybody's been very kind. If indeed the jury is a representative sampling of the community, do you think that the assumption that they're going to be completely unfeeling about this issue might be way off base?
I don't think at all that they are unfeeling. I think definitely we get a really good view into the minds of the jurors when we hear their questions. That was a new thing for me as well, to know that the jurors could ask questions. And I think that we are seeing from everyone that we speak to that there is concern about this. And I think that we have a good chance with this jury of having some very compassionate people. And I mean, the judge stated as much with the video, that they don't want to show it simply because they know that it will tug at the heartstrings of the jury, and they're concerned about the emotions that will be brought up if they show that video. So I know that we have compassionate people here, and if, as you say, the jury, if they are actually a representation of the people with whom we have spoken on a daily basis out here doing some leafleting, then I think we have a chance.
If you're just joining us, we are talking about the trial of Wayne Hsiung and Paul Picklesimer, two men, Wayne Hsiung being a constitutional law professor, as well as the co-founder of DXE, Direct Action Everywhere, a youth-oriented group that does all sorts of extraordinary activism that is sort of was unheard of until they got started doing their unique activism. And Paul Picklesimer, who is a supporter and a member of Direct Action Everywhere, known as DXC, they are on trial in Utah. They could go to prison. There they are committing the alleged crime, taking two piglets out, each worth less than $50. And they could go to prison for up to 11 years for doing so. This is the judge in the case, Jeffrey Wilcox. Here they are at the defense table. We are providing team coverage with some notable experts. A former prosecutor named Bonnie Klapper, who's famous for breaking up large cartels, is expected to join us any minute now at 12:30 to talk about this case. So meanwhile, I'm going to play some testimony, and I want to get our panel's reaction. This is Wayne Hsiung cross-examining. He is defending himself, so he's acting as his own attorney, but he's cross-examining the manager of Smithfield.
So you said previously that you cannot see the piglets inside a farrowing barn because the building is completely enclosed, correct? And there are no windows or curtains. And that's because the piglets need to stay warm, correct?
Yes.
And in the Utah winter, it can get kind of cold, even in the desert, right?
Yes.
And the piglets probably need to be held in 80 degrees.
Your Honor, I think the line of question we're going down is leading us toward farm management practices. And I think our focus is just on whether or not the animals were spoiled.
Your Honor.
What's your foundation? I mean, what do you...
Your Honor, what we're trying to get at is that the likelihood that the defendants would have taken a piglet from a gestation barn, when gestation barns are inappropriate places for a piglet to live, partly because they're far too cold, right? They're open to the elements, is relevant evidence to determine whether there was either the intent to remove a piglet from a gestation barn, or we actually did remove a piglet from a gestation barn. In other words, the conditions inside the barn are illustrative of whether defendants had the intent or did actually commit the theft inside the gestation barn.
And I think this is beyond direct, Your Honor.
It is an unsustainable rejection.
So it seems like, Donnie, the judge is basically siding with the prosecution to really try to keep the intent, the purpose of Wayne and Paul going into that factory farm away from the jury. But it's kind of like, I would say, the big elephant in the room. You know, the more you try to ignore something, sometimes the more you bring attention to it. Mm-hmm. Oh, you're muted. Hold on. There you go.
That's why I think that the prosecutor, in his opening remarks, should have said at the outset, you're going to see some video footage of the crime being committed and of the alleged crime, and the video might be upsetting to see, but that's not, you're not here to make judgments on that. You're here to just determine whether or not this crime was committed. So by continuing to dance around this video and to silence Wayne as he's cross-examining the prosecution's witnesses, I just think that the judge, who's clearly siding with the prosecution and the prosecution itself, are shooting themselves in the foot. And the more they refuse to allow this footage to be shown and to be discussed, the more these jurors are going to be tempted to find out what it is they're talking about.
Well, we've got another example. I think this one is really the penultimate example of how Wayne, in representing himself and cross-examining the Smithfield, the factory farm manager, is just stopped from trying to get any point across about the condition of the animals.
You testified that piglets, I just want to restate your testimony previously, that piglets have value in Smithfield, correct?
Yes, they do.
Okay. Does this include piglets that end up in a dumpster outside?
Again, Your Honor, objection. We've gone over this 3 or 4 times.
Sustained.
And piglets that are discarded into dumpsters. Presumably these piglets are not sold for meat,
I
correct?
think this is the 5th time I've stood and objected to this line of question.
Your Honor, I'm just trying to establish.
It's sustained.
Okay.
I don't want you mentioning that again.
Okay. Your Honor, I'm just trying to establish the value of the piglets, which is an element of
I've
theft.
sustained the objection.
Your Honor, may I approach?
No. Ask a question.
Honestly, I know Lisa Bloom has said it has happened where an attorney for either side says, may I approach? And the judge says no. But I've covered a lot of major trials, and I've never heard that. I have never personally heard when a lawyer says, Your Honor, may I approach? No. I mean, what is your reaction to that, Mick?
Well, I mean, it's actually more than that. I noticed yesterday the judge seemed to repeatedly want to bypass Wayne altogether. Now, I'm no expert. I don't know if that's perhaps due to the fact that Wayne is representing himself. Maybe the judge thinks of that negatively in general.
He does. He's already said that.
Right. So it could be part of that. But nonetheless, he's representing himself. He's his own attorney. Every chance he got, he went to Paul's attorney and then literally wanted to move on. And then Wayne had to get up and say, hey, my turn, right? It happened repeatedly. And actually, he was quite rude to Wayne at one point yesterday, where Wayne rightfully said, I have a cross. He said, yes, may I ask another question? He said, yeah, just do it sitting there. And there was some cackling and laughter in the background.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you can appeal based on cackling and laughter, but certainly, Gwenna, we're not having unusual reactions to this because this is a panel of animal lovers. Let's be real. MSNBC has panels and they have people who are progressive. Fox News has panels. They have people who are generally conservative, unless they're trying to skewer somebody. So just like those other networks, we have a point of view. That doesn't mean we make things up. But I think that we're not imagining it. The judge is definitely, to me, this is my humble opinion, seems hostile to the defense.
Extremely hostile. And like you said, you don't have to be an animal lover to see that. It was interesting when I think Wayne was questioning, I guess, farm management practices and how that got shut down. It's like, how can that not be allowed in the conversation? It's like if you hear a child, let's put the human thing on it, since people have the cognitive dissonance. Even some of the viewers here have some serious cognitive dissonance going on about the life and soul of an animal. You hear a child screaming in the house saying, help me, I'm being kidnapped, or, you hear some horrible sounds. Do you say, well, that's not my place because their parent is in there? You're going to bust the door down, see what's going on, rescue the child. You're not going to go on trial for having rescued a human being that was actually suffering. So, and this obviously is the type of thing that DXC is trying to make people see, that all life is equal, that suffering has no place on this planet, and that, just as someone saw a puppy in a car suffocating, I don't care if they are an animal ag or if they have a farm with animals, they're going to do something, because most of us have been programmed to look at certain species, certain animals, certain humans, certain people as deserving of a certain level of compassion. So it's, regardless of what happens with this, to me, this is creating a shift in the consciousness of the people that are involved in this court case, because the whole point of the reason that we even have this movement is we need more love, we need more compassion, we need people to see each other as equal. And I think that Yeah, and I keep getting like remnants of Anita in this, like, what she went through of having to go to trial because she gave a pig water.
Yes, and you're referring to the founder of the Save movement, Anita Krines, based in Toronto. She is a PhD, studying Tolstoy, who said we have a moral obligation when we see suffering to get close, see if we can help it, even if we can, to bear witness. And she started the Save movement, where people bear witness to animals going to slaughter. And she was giving water to a pig. She was arrested and prosecuted. But interestingly enough, she turned that trial into a cause célèbre. She became a cause célèbre. She put animal agriculture on trial. Massive coverage in Canada, which covers things differently than the United States, because frankly, this is my opinion, there's not as much violent crime or just, I would say, tabloidy coverage in Canada. So serious things get covered. And I was there when she walked out of court. We were the only network to be going live as she walked out of court. And it was a scrum of media. That's what should be happening here, but it's not. But it was a scrum of mainstream media in Canada when Anita Krines was convicted. Meanwhile, speaking of PhDs and other notables who are speaking out on this case, here is Peter Singer, known as the father of the animal rights movement, author of Animal Liberation and many, many other books, very, very respected intellectual, speaking out about this trial.
Hi, I'm Peter Singer. I'm professor of bioethics at Princeton University, and I'm concerned about the fact that Wayne Hsiung is facing prison for rescuing 2 sick and dying piglets from one of the nation's largest pig farms run by Smithfield. People who do this, try to stop this cruelty, should be applauded, not convicted of crimes. And what's particularly absurd is that the court has ruled that the footage of the conditions of the pigs is too horrific for the jury to see. It's so horrific, and yet the court is protecting the pig farms that do that, instead of allowing the jury to see the truth about how pig meat is produced. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join me in supporting Wayne Hsiung.
Donny Moss, what's your reaction to Peter Singer, the founder of considered the father, even though it goes way back, but he's often referred to as the father of the animal rights movement? Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
So I'm sorry. You know how historic the case is when you have, really, as you said, the father of the animal rights movement taking time to remark on it. It's pretty damning that it's pretty damning to the prosecution that they're not showing the testimony, and I do think it's going to backfire. I got a text from Bonnie Klapper, the criminal defense attorney, who as you mentioned, should be dialing in. But I just wanted to mention what she wrote in her text, and that is. It is so clear that the judge is not only biased, he and the prosecutor clearly don't know how to try a case. The evidentiary rulings are ridiculous, but they are grounds for appeal. Anyway, I hope she's able to call in to sort of expand upon that. But I think we're between Bonnie Klapper and Lisa Bloom, both of whom are criminal defense attorneys. I'm getting the sense here that there's going to really be grounds for appeal if they're not acquitted on the charges.
Yes, and please text her and tell her to get her tuchus over here and sit down. Now, Carla Cabral, I don't want to just be in a bubble. There are things that people are saying. Okay, so here, let me go to one of them, because the thing though is they were wrong for what they did. They broke into a business and stole some animals. So what is your response to that?
Well, I think it's disingenuous to pretend that conditions don't matter, regardless of whether it's a business or not. As was stated before, if a puppy or a cat was in conditions that were horrific inside a business, and somebody went in and documented those conditions and then rescued that dog or that cat, people would be applauding it. And so whether it's a business or not, I don't think personally should matter. I think that the conditions in which these living beings are kept is at issue, and I think it's a travesty that the jury is not getting to understand the conditions in which these piglets were kept.
Yes, and I have to say, though, that a lot of people, when they are faced with, here are the jury instructions, and they say, and I've heard this when they interview jurors afterwards, well, we wanted to go, we had sympathy, I wanted to go in another direction, but when I looked at the letter of the law and the jury instructions, boy, they just didn't give me that leeway to just judge with my heart. So, Mick, how important are the jury instructions? Because that's another way for the court system to put some spin on the ball.
Well, they're just as important as what the judge does. I mean, he's basically the king in that courtroom, right? And those are his rules. So it really is difficult to overcome a lot of these. This is kind of why social justice movements take a long time. I mean, you're fighting against laws that are written by, let's face it, all the men in many cases, right? And they represent a slice of history at a given time. Laws change throughout history. I mean, that's the only way we can actually evolve. And for us to evolve, we actually need to go through these processes. And this is why historically, not much has changed except for brave people breaking unjust laws, which eventually get changed.
Well, yes, and somebody here said lunch hour counter protests in the 1960s violated the law. We know that in all social justice movements, whether it was the suffragettes trying to get the right for women to vote, which only became universal suffrage in 1920, and there were protests for decades prior to that. Yes, they broke the law, but it was civil disobedience. They weren't committing a violent crime. Right. So we need to distinguish that, correct or not, Gwenna Hunter?
Yes, I completely agree. We definitely need to distinguish that. And, you know, I have my little fur baby right here. And I tell you what, if something was going on with her and, you know, she's in a car or any type of situation that she needs to be rescued, like it was just, I think Donnie is the one that said that, or I can't remember. Someone said that we would be applauding certain rescues, which is so true. Certain rescues get applauded. Certain rescues get major news coverage. When you hear about sometimes someone breaking a car door because there is an animal inside, or even a baby inside, not a baby inside, but a child inside, like that type of stuff gets like major coverage and it gets applauded. But with a pig, because we look at pigs as profit and as food and as nutrition, and in some cases, entertainment, it's like, you know, bypassing compassion for profits. I know that I won't say the name, but there's a gentleman that's on here that just keeps creating the argument of, which shows a ton of lack of empathy. But I believe he mentioned earlier that he has some type of farm and that he raises animals. And, you know, when you're someone that's like, you know, raising animals for food, and this is what you do for a living, it's very easy to lock in your cognitive dissonance, because if you dare go outside that, now you got to look for an entirely new way of living. You have to forget all that you've been taught. And that's kind of my concern in this case, that the people that they selected for this jury, which I'm sure were very crafted and very perfect for this type of case, you know, may continue to have a level of cognitive dissonance, even though their heart may get tapped into a little bit.
Well, let's talk about that, because Wayne Hsiung and Paul Picklesimer came out during the jury selection process and complained about how they were not allowed to ask the jurors about how they feel about animals.
The defense argued that because the questionnaire asks if you or someone who you know works within the animal production industry, yes or no, they were saying that will let you know if you have a bias or not. When we know that's not the case. People get tattoos of quote-unquote bacon. Like, we need to be able to really know what people are about, what they care about, how they feel about animals in general. And these are things we're just not going to be allowed to find out.
So, yeah, what do you make of the fact that you can't ask those questions? And by the way, this is an anonymous jury, which is generally reserved for organized crime figures. So that already, according to the defense, telegraphs that, oh, these are dangerous people. In fact, I noticed this yesterday when Wayne would ask, may I approach the witness? The judge said, no, you have to give your piece of paper to the bailiff, and the bailiff will approach the witness, implying that somehow, what is he going to do? Jump over the counter and throttle the witness? I mean, that was so bizarre. Another thing I've never seen where quite often, can you validate this document? The attorney approaches the witness. He's saying, no, you can't do that. And I want to go to Carla on that because you probably saw that or heard about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It was very interesting on the first day. We were actually allowed inside the courtroom while they were going through the questionnaires that the anonymous jurors answered. So that is how, for voir dire, because they were not actually able to ask the jurors any questions in person, they were not actually able to look at the jurors and get a sense of who they were. Everything was just done by paper. They answered a long questionnaire, and there were several jurors that had law enforcement either as family members or people that they knew. There were several people that worked at 4 different industries, beef industries, dairy industries, and they were going through and deciding, who they were and who they were not going to keep it. And it was just so interesting, the differences between just regular trials that you see every day and how these defendants are being treated.
Now, I want to play another clip because it's so fascinating to see what the prosecution was allowed to talk about. The prosecution was allowed to talk about the cause of the defendants, but the defendants can't talk about the cause. So let's listen to this.
Now, the facts in this case will show that, among other things, Milford Valley is home to Smithfield Foods, where they raise pigs. Now, the facts in this case are that early in the winter months of 2017, probably the month of March, under the cover of darkness, Mr. Wayne Hsiung and Mr. Paul Picklesimer, along with a few others, entered an unauthorized area owned by Smithfield Farms, crossing over a boundary fence, making unlawful entry into a barn, and while inside the barn, without permission of the owners, removing 2 of the pigs, stealing them. Now, while they did this, while they committed this crime, the evidence will show they actually filmed themselves doing it, then posted the video online. Now, they had 2 objectives in doing that. The first, of course, was to draw attention to their cause. The second was to engage in a little bit of fundraising, to seek out donations from people online. Now, the evidence will show that after the pigs were removed from Smithfield, the pigs were delivered north to Harriman, Utah, where they stayed at Chain Farms in the Harriman area. The pigs remained there for a little while until eventually they were delivered to Colorado.
So, Mick, what is your reaction to how the prosecution is sort of allowed to go on? That was just a little snippet. The prosecutor also talked about where he was raised. He was raised in that county where the Smithfield farm is, and kind of like, I'm just real down home kind of thing. Allowed to give his sort of personalize his story.
Well, I mean, they're kind of playing this whole thing as if it's a little town, court case. But I think they're kind of missing the point. This is going to be a global situation. You talked about DXC. The reason DXC is so powerful is because you said they're not following the rules. It's because they're not following the rules that DXC, in this case representing DXC, Wayne and Paul, are in court. And I think these are the kind of things that the prosecution is missing. And let's face it, you talked about the 20-somethings who are running DXC. These people are amazing. They're brilliant. They're young, they're energetic, they're smart, and they're tech savvy, which most of us aren't even near what they are. And let's talk about these old industries, established industries like Big Ag, for example. These are run by old men who know nothing about technology, who really don't understand the shifts in societal culture. So I think they're really on the losing end of things. They're not in an enviable situation because they are trying to defend the indefensible.
Well, look, it's very hard to measure progress in real time. And what we're seeing is a convergence of factors that is making the animal agriculture industry much more challenging, to the point where there are a lot of programs to help ranchers and farmers transition away from animal agriculture to growing plants. Mercy for Animals has a program. Animal Outlook has a program. Rowdy Girl Sanctuary has a program. And a lot of these farmers and ranchers want out because with climate change and the heating planet, it's becoming much harder to raise cattle. In fact, just today, before coming on, I saw a headline on Yahoo News which says ranchers and farmers are throwing up their hands and they don't know what to do with their animals because the heat is causing the animals to collapse and the hay is drying up because of the heat. So we're having crop failure. The hay is becoming much more expensive. It's not just the war in Ukraine, it's also climate change. So the pressure is happening, okay? Is this what you might call St. Vitus dance for this industry? Or is this industry going to continue to grow as the human population continues to grow? Gwenna Hunter.
No, I personally believe that as we're creating a new world, and we're doing that right now, that is happening. The world is changing. But with change also comes chaos. In order for you to project on the up, you got to go through the chaos and the detox. But I believe that we are transitioning into a more plant-based world. I've said this for a long time, that I do believe in this lifetime that we will have, if not completely, and when I say lifetime, I mean like if I live to be 90 or something like that, that we'll have a majority plant-based world with all of the new technology coming, with the new technology with food, with how we're doing plant-based meats, with the cell technology, with all of that. It's not sustainable to continue to create, cows and have them on the land and slaughter them. And as you said, like hay is becoming expensive, animals are collapsing. It's not sustainable. And no matter what your belief system is, climate change is happening and it's real. And animal agriculture is a huge cause of that. So I do believe that this world is transitioning and that we are going to see a better world in this lifetime.
Thank you, Gwenna Hunter, founder of Vegans for Black Lives Matter, joining us today along with an incredible panel. We have Carla Cabral outside the courthouse in Utah. We have TheirTurn's Donny Moss, who is an independent journalist who does incredible journalism on the issue of animal rights, and Mick Davoudian, who's an avid trial watcher and animal lover, who's been watching the trial very carefully. And so we invited him on as well to comment. Now we're going to show you another piece of this very long video that the jury will never see of Wayne Hsiung and Paul Picklesimer going into the Smithfield factory farm where there are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of pigs, and pigs are being bred. And this is the footage that the judge said the jurors could not see, even though it was them videotaping their own alleged crime and then broadcasting it to the world. And Smithfield originally did not know this alleged crime had occurred until it popped up in media, including the New York Times. So watch this. The New York Times included a link to this video. In fact, that's how I got this video to play. I went to the New York Times article, which I can show you right here, which dates back to 2017 when this originally occurred. And in this article, it includes a link to the footage, which is the actual crime, alleged crime of Wayne and Paul going in to rescue these two pigs occurring.
And she'll be stuck here for at least 4 years, sometimes 5 or 6 years, living in a crate this size, forcibly impregnated over and over again, and then finally killed when she can no longer produce as many piglets as this farm wants her to produce. Once it becomes unprofitable, she'll be killed. She'll never step outside her entire life.
So this is a farrowing crate. This mother pig was taken from a gestation crate facility to here to give birth. She's going to be with her kids for 3 weeks, and then they're all going to be taken away from her and soon sent off to slaughter.
All right, so there you again. It was questioned. In fact, Wayne Hsiung questioned the manager. Where did you find out? Long after they went in that they had gone in. And I think it's worth playing that clip as well, because it kind of shows that they didn't even know that this was happening until the media reported.
So you said previously that you cannot see the piglets inside a farrowing barn because the building is completely enclosed, correct? And there are no windows or curtains. And that's because the piglets need to stay warm, correct?
Yes.
And in Utah winter, it can get kind of cold, even in the desert, right?
Yes.
And the piglets probably need to be held in 80 degrees.
Your Honor, I think the line of question we're going down is leading us toward farm management practices. And I think our focus is just on whether or not the animals were spoiled.
Your Honor.
What's your foundation? I mean, what do you...
Your Honor, what we're trying to get at is that the likelihood that the defendants would have taken a piglet from a gestation barn, when gestation barns are inappropriate places for a piglet to live, partly because they're far too cold, right? They're open to the elements, is relevant evidence to determine whether there was either the intent to remove a piglet from a gestation barn, or we actually did remove a piglet from a gestation barn. In other words, the conditions inside the barn are illustrative of whether defendants had the intent or did actually commit the theft inside the gestation barn.
And I think this is beyond direct, Your Honor.
It is not sustaining the objection.
Okay, here's one more clip, and then we'll...
Mr. Talman, my name is Wayne Hsiung. I'm the defendant and counsel in this case. I'm going to ask you a few questions to follow up on what Mr. Christensen asked you. Is that all right?
No problem.
You viewed a video of an intrusion into farms, I think you said around June or July 2017, correct?
Yes.
But you had no knowledge of this intrusion prior to that video?
No.
Okay. And do you know where you obtained this video?
It was online. It was on Facebook, I believe.
Do you know how Smithfield Foods came into possession of this video or found out about this video?
I don't.
Is it possible this video was disclosed to you by the New York Times?
By who?
The New York Times, a publication?
No, we just Googled it.
Okay, you don't recall the New York Times delivering this video to your company?
No.
In this video that you watched in June or July 2017, you said you narrowed down the time frame.
Yes.
For the video that had been actually shot as opposed to published, correct? Okay. Because you watched it when it was published in June or July 2017, correct?
Yes.
In that time frame, that was approximately March of 2017, right?
Yes.
So back in March of 2017, when this incident did happen, you don't have any recollection of realizing the piglets are gone, do you?
No.
And that's probably because there are lots of piglets in Smithfield? In fact, there are thousands of pigs, even at a single farm like yours, correct? And that would mean there are thousands of piglets at Smithfield at this one site.
All right. Now, I want to say that we were expecting prosecutor Bonnie Klapper to join us. However, she is literally in a jail, not jailed herself, but representing a client. But we have Marina Bolotnikova back from she's reporting for the Intercept on this trial. You've been watching the trial coverage all day. Can you bring us up to date on what happened today? Because that was testimony from yesterday.
Right, yes. So the morning was spent talking to FBI Special Agent Chris Anderson. He was he's a witness for the state, so he was direct examined by the prosecutor, cross-examined by the defense counsel, and he was the lead FBI officer involved in the FBI's investigation of of the piglet rescue, because as as some listeners, viewers may know, the FBI, as a result of the piglet rescue, the FBI chased the piglets across state lines into Colorado and raided multiple farm sanctuaries and mutilated one of the piglets, cut a piece of her ear off once they found the piglets in question. So he was questioned this morning. Some interesting things came out of that line of questioning. He said that about 8, possibly more FBI agents worked on just this investigation. And Wayne Hsiung, he's a defendant, who's also an attorney, he's representing himself, questioned the FBI agent. He asked him, are you aware of any other FBI case involving the theft of less than $100 of property that had 8 FBI agents assigned to it? And he struggled to think of any and said, no, I can't think of any cases that I've worked on like that.
So that's very interesting. In other words, the implication is, and I was looking for a comment. Somebody said now there's general rules in a lot of big cities. If the theft is under a certain amount, like under $1,000, there's not even a prosecution. And yet you have 8 FBI agents crossing state lines to go after these 2 piglets who are worth less than $50 each. Mick Davoudian, your reaction to that?
It's shocking. Forget about theft of items less than $1,000. I live in Venice, on the Venice canals. We moved a couple of years ago here. We love it here, but we are surrounded by homeless encampments. And what's happening is actual felonies happening throughout the day, every single day around this town. Santa Monica, Marina del Rey, Venice, we're inundated. In fact, on Sunday night, we had here on the canals what I would call an inferno that burned down and damaged several houses. I've never seen fire that intense in my life. It was absolutely terrifying, and it was just incredible that nobody got hurt. But from every indication, it seems it was a homeless person or a group that were camping out inside a home that was under construction. And are these people going to be prosecuted? If they're caught, I'm sure they will be. But the police and the industry, as far as in general, the police and the force in the area does not have the resources. Let's put it that way. I don't want to say they're not willing. They just don't have the resources. The problem is so big, and these people get away with felonies.
Well, let me just say this. I think what you're saying is, it's a case of selective indignation or selective prosecution. So yes, that was a big news story. The fire that burned down several homes in the Venice canals. It was wildfire. It was all over the news. And I don't know. I assume that that's going to be followed up by the police and prosecuted. But I mean, getting back to this point here, 8 FBI agents following across state lines, going into sanctuaries, doing a biopsy on a pig's ear where they cut a piece. And the New York Times also reported on that, I believe, or the Washington Post. It's extraordinary. I mean, I think it's almost, Donny Moss, I think it's almost unprecedented.
You have to wonder, Jane, what the jurors are thinking when they learn that 8 FBI agents at least are looking for piglets who were going to be discarded in the garbage. I think Wayne was able to get a message point out at some point in his cross-examination that these piglets die, and it's just part of their cost of doing business. These jurors have to be asking themselves, what is the larger story here? Why is the FBI going after piglets who would have been discarded anyway? And again, I just think it calls attention to the fact that the prosecution is stabbing itself in the foot by not just being forthright about what the cause is, right? Because we heard the prosecutor in the opening testimony talk about the cause, but he didn't say what the cause, he just mentioned the word. He didn't say what the cause is. That and all of the talk about the video, particularly as Gwenna mentioned in Wayne's interrogation of the farm manager, he used the word video 10 times or more. These jurors are going to have to be asking questions about what the real story is here and what they're not being told. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a good thing for the defendants.
So let me go back to Marina Bolotnikova, who is reporting on this for the Intercept and has followed it possibly more than anybody who's outside the case itself. How do you think it's going? You've had a chance to see it now for a few days.
Yeah. Well,
and speak up, please. You're a little muted. Raise your volume up.
What about now?
Yeah, better. Thank you.
It's hard exactly to say. We're still kind of at the beginning, and the defendants haven't testified yet. I think yesterday overall actually went quite well for the defendants. They were able to, despite Wayne getting shot down a lot, trying to ask questions about this, they were ultimately able to establish, certain, things about how the piglets weren't necessarily worth anything to Smithfield, despite what the prosecution is saying. Today, from what I've seen, I think it's been kind of mixed. When Wayne was questioning the FBI agent, he was trying to ask a lot of questions to basically try to impeach the witness and show, he was quoting from a document that the FBI agent wrote about. Sorry, this is my cat in the.
Yes.
In this,
they're always invited. They're always invited on our Unchained TV broadcast. Continue on.
He was quoting a document that the FBI agent wrote, summarizing, the situation with the missing piglets, which said that it was part of a quote, that the rescue was part of a scheme to defame Costco, because Costco buys Smithfield pork. So, oh my gosh, I'm getting yet another call. Because Costco buys pork from Smithfield, and he talked to his Costco executive in this case. The FBI agent never talked to either of the defendants, but he talked to Costco. And so Wayne was trying to draw some of that out to try to show that this is about PR, this is about corporations' reputations, but the judge was not having any of that and shut it down. Another thing that happened.
I want to just quickly go to that. That is pretty extraordinary. What you're saying is that the FBI consulted with the companies involved that might even be marginally involved, like big companies that sell pork products, but they didn't consult those people who went inside or that organization. Can you just spell that out again?
Yeah, they said the FBI agent said that he had gathered enough evidence from the video that was published, again, the video that the jury is not allowed to see, but that is clearly the main source of evidence in this case. He said that he had gathered enough evidence from that video, from other kind of research he did about the defendants by, he said he obtained Wayne's cell phone data from Verizon to geolocate, confirm that he was in Beaver, Utah when the alleged crimes were committed. And so he said he had enough evidence from all of that it wasn't necessary to talk to the defendants.
Wow, that says a lot right there. I want to go to Carla Cabral, who has now moved into her car. Carla, you were asked to leave the area. Bring us up to date on that. And if you could unmute, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm not sure why it took, around an hour and 45 minutes, but one of the officers from the court came out and approached me and asked what I was doing and, why I was standing in front of the courthouse. What's been interesting from the time that we arrived, all of us from DXC, Direct Action Everywhere, all the activists, when we, I think the day before we arrived, or the day of, we noticed very fresh, no loitering signs that went up all around the courthouse in anticipation, I think, of our arrival, so that we would not linger in the area. And again, I'm not sure why it took so long, but an officer from the courthouse came out, approached me, asked what I was doing, what this was, and asked me to leave the area. He was nice about it, but made it clear that I was not welcome to just stay out there. Let
me ask you a follow-up question, because they had a change of venue, and this was a victory for the defense. It was originally supposed to be in Beaver County, which is where Smithfield is located. Correct me if I'm wrong. And what happened was some activists from Los Angeles, I believe, came out to Beaver County, and they were walking around talking to people in the town, and the sheriffs, because they had their video going, the sheriffs were caught on tape saying, I remember one where he said, you don't have something to the effect of, you don't have a permit to sell your goods here on this street. And the activist laughed and said, I'm not selling goods. I'm just talking to people. This is my constitutional right on a public street to talk to people. Anyway, there were various interactions like that, and some of them were caught on tape. And apparently there's a lawsuit now as a result of that. And that was possibly instrumental of the next day or a couple of days later. Oh no, look at this. We're getting a change of venue. Can you bring us up to date on that, Carla?
Yeah, so that's right. It was activists from the Bay Area. Notably, Curtis Vollmer was the activist who caught the brunt of the harassment by several of the officers in Beaver County. They were there to do leafleting. Actually, Curtis reached out to the venue ahead of time just to make sure that it would be okay that they were there, and they were told that it was not a problem. So they showed up. And very soon after arriving, several of officers showed up. Officer Woolsey was the main officer who made it clear that activists were not welcome there. Officer Woolsey went so far as to talk to people that were around, telling them that DXC was responsible for what was happening at Smithfield and that people were losing their jobs because of us. And he confronted several of the activists, saying that our lives were going to be in danger, and it, made it a scary situation that it didn't need to be, and prohibited the activists from being able to simply leaflet and talk to the people that were there. When none of the people that were there showed any aggression towards us, people were there simply to say, hey, do you know about this? And if people said, I don't want to know, they were say, okay, thank you very much, and they could go about their way. So it was very confrontational on the officers in Beaver County. And so Direct Action Everywhere is suing Beaver County for a violation of their First Amendment rights.
Wow. My gosh, this is a documentary. Somebody needs to do a docuseries on this. Mick, you are a person who's had a lot of experience in the high-tech industry, okay? You've dealt with very important people. You've done a lot of extraordinary things. When you look at this case and put it in context of where we are as a society, okay, what would you say? There are moments in history that maybe at the moment in time did not seem like such a big deal. And we can all think of those moments where somebody had mentioned the lunch counter protests, the suffragettes who were force-fed in prison when they refused to whatever, literally women were force-fed when they were on a hunger strike in prison, in jail, before women got the right to vote. There are these moments in history, but at the time, it may not be recognized as something really, really significant. Where do you think this trial stacks up?
Well, more so the I think the movement. There are stages of life when it comes to social justice movements. I think we are approaching kind of obviously we're not quite mature yet. If we were, there'd be a lot more public visibility to it. But we're getting there. So I think that's where we're at. I think back in the 80s, I was a young man. And as a gay young man, I was out and proud and happy with my life, happy with my partner. But there was still a lot of oppression going on back then. And back in 1993, my now husband of 35 years and I were together back then, just a couple of years. We went to the March on Washington for gay rights. And I remember telling a friend of ours, we're going to participate in a huge, celebration of sorts, a kind of a wedding, even though it wasn't a legal wedding, but there were 5,000 couples and we all got married. So when I told him we're going to do this, his reaction was, well, why would you bother? It's never going to be legal. Well, fast forward to whatever, 25 years later, we see what happened. It doesn't mean that's the end point. We still have to fight because justice just doesn't stay in a vacuum. There are forces trying to take away rights, even as you have them. But that's where we are. I think we're at the stage where this is going to explode.
All right. Thank you for that. A great analogy or reference point. Marina Bolotnikova, again, you've been covering this for The Intercept from the beginning. Give us a preview. How long is this trial going to last? When do you think we might have the closing statements, closing arguments, a verdict? And, where are we here?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's really unpredictable. I think this judge is determined to power through this quickly. I think that's and that's why he kept jury selection going for 12 hours on Monday. So it's scheduled. It's scheduled to only run through this week and end on Friday. Obviously that's not guaranteed because sometimes it's just not done on time. I think it is. I think it's likely to end on Friday. It could also be next week. Another thing that happened today that I was going to mention is about an hour ago, the judge ordered that there's a pool reporter in the courtroom from St. George News, a local news outlet. He has been getting great footage of everything. He shared all the footage with other reporters yesterday, some of which we've been able to share. The judge ordered that he is not allowed to talk to any of the activists between 9 and 5, or his access is going to be revoked. Which the reason for that is unclear. I think the judge said that he's concerned that it will kind of interfere in some way or bother him while he's trying to do his job. But I think that order kind of speaks for itself.
It's odd. Okay, so I've been dealing with this reporter, and he's been very responsive and wonderful. I think his name is Jeff Richardson with the St. George News. And so here's some of the backstory. I had applied to be a pool reporter, to have a camera in the courtroom. I would have gone to Utah and put a camera right in the courtroom. And I was denied, saying, Marina, who is this person right here, who you were looking at and just spoke, sorry, you're denied because Marina Bolotnikova had requested first. She's going to be the pool reporter. She's going to take recordings off of WebEx, and then she's going to disseminate them to the media. Well, then a couple of days before the start of the trial, and full disclosure, we even sent a computer over to her so she could actually record the trial and we could talk to her at the same time, because it would be impossible to do this two at once with one computer. A couple of days later, before the trial, suddenly the judge said, no, her permission is revoked. We're giving it to St. George News, and they're going to be the pool camera. Wow. So I don't know when they requested. Did they request before me or after me? So now they have this camera in the courtroom, but it can't be turned around really quickly because they record all day. In fact, I was up till very late last night downloading the feed, which takes a considerable amount of time. Think about 5, 6, 7 hours of court footage going down into my my computer via WeTransfer, and then having to cut little clips. So the very fact that you can't turn it around instantly is going to deter coverage, which by the very nature of news has to be timely. Okay. Something that is, you know, what they say is yesterday's news is today's, garbage wrapper. But it has to be timely, and he's doing the best job. I mean, he's really been very responsive. Kudos to Jeff Richards of the St. George News. However, he's limited by the fact that he has to do his own reporting. He even said that. I'll get it to you as soon as I can. And then we're getting it at the very end of the day. So now the judge is apparently telling this reporter, you can't talk to any of the activists. What do you think is behind that, Donnie? You're pretty good with strategy and analysis. Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Sorry, I guess he has a sense that the reporter is perhaps sympathetic. I mean, it's just another example of how this judge, and probably at the urging of the prosecution, is moving mountains to keep the information out of the public domain. It just seems so unconstitutional, if that's the right word, to make media access to this information so difficult. And I can't help but think, Jane, that this is going to backfire in one way or another, perhaps in the defendant's ability to ask for an appeal if they're convicted, or perhaps in media coverage about how the trial was handled. Something's got to give here. This doesn't seem sustainable.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, these things end up being taught in schools as what not to do. And we know that in law schools, a lot of times they can now look at videotape of trials and get a sense of, okay, this was a good move, that was a bad move. Carla, you are maintaining your cool. And it seems like Wayne, when you see his cross-examinations, is very, very cool. But there was one point where it got a little bit heated. We're just about to wrap up, but I want to just play this because I think this kind of summarizes the entire case, and it's as close to a confrontation as we've heard.
You testified that piglets, I just want to restate your testimony previously, that piglets have value in Smithfield, correct?
Yes, they do.
Okay. Does this include piglets that end up in a dumpster outside?
Again, Your Honor, objection. You've gone over this 3 or 4 times.
That's sustained.
And piglets that are discarded into dumpsters. Presumably these piglets are not sold for meat,
I
correct?
think this is the 5th time I've stood and objected to this kind of question.
Your Honor, I'm just trying to establish...
It's sustained.
Okay.
I don't want you mentioning that again.
Okay. Your Honor, I'm just trying to establish the value of the piglets, which is an element of
that.
theft.
Sustain the objection.
Your Honor, may I approach?
No. Ask the question.
May I approach? No. Ask the question. What was your reaction to that, Marina?
Yeah, that was definitely a memorable moment yesterday when the judge said, I don't want to hear you asking about this again. He kept asking about the dead piglets in dumpsters. I think that it's been, I think it has been evident throughout the lead up to this trial and the pretrial hearings that this, I think this judge he gets angry at Wayne. I think it's as an outsider, from an outsider's perspective, it certainly seems like he doesn't like Wayne, and it's palpable, and I'm sure it is to the jury too.
Wow. Okay. Well, we're going to wrap up our coverage. I want to give everybody a chance for final thoughts and remind you that we are also streaming this on our global streaming network, UnchainedTV, which you can download on your phone for free. It doesn't require an email or anything, and it has 712 and counting videos that are a portal to a compassionate way of living. And we're also covering this trial. So now we're upgrading our streaming network for live coverage in the hopes of becoming the sustainable and compassionate CNN. And you're going to see more and more shows like this, live coverage of important events. In fact, we're going to the big vegan summit in DC in a couple of weeks, and we're going to be live interviewing very, very important leaders in our movement there. So please download Unchained TV, the global streaming network. Yes, I know this is homemade. It's in the process. We got an order in, okay, to get some better ones. But all seriousness, yes. And Paige Parsons Roach says we are going to become the vegan CNN. That's our goal. Yes. And just like MSNBC has a point of view and Fox News has a point of view, sure, we have a point of view, but we stick with the facts as well. So let's get final thoughts, because we're going to be back tomorrow with this panel and other incredible guests. Let's do a little roundtable. Final thoughts on this case. Let's start with Donny Moss.
When tens of thousands of people were dying of AIDS sort of in the first years of the epidemic, and the government was ignoring the epidemic because of who was affected, people with AIDS literally climbed up the walls of the NIH and blocked the entrance of the Holland Tunnel. It's those kinds of tactics and the kinds of tactics that animal rights activists are employing now, such as the ones in this trial, which are much less perhaps provocative than what I just described. That's what's going to move the needle. Change happens in the discomfort zone. These guys from DXC and women from DXC, they are going to move the needle in the right direction much more quickly than if they weren't engaging in these tactics. And what they've done is not a crime, in the same way that breaking a window to rescue a baby or a dog is not a crime. They're heroes.
All right. And we're going to go next to Mick Davoudian.
Well, Jane, don't get angry with me for saying you're a legend, because you are, but I also know that you're a visionary. We were talking about timeliness of news and how important it is to get the information out quickly. And in this case, it's very frustrating because, like you said, yesterday's footage, you didn't get it till this early this morning done, right? So, but I think there's something to be said about the fact that things have changed. People are very busy. Technology is keeping everyone super busy to the point where people don't necessarily have the time to sit and watch something live during the day hours. So I think what you mentioned earlier, as far as like a limited series, I see that happening. I think this case should be in a limited series on Unchained TV, or as Paige said, maybe it would be the VNN, Vegan News Network.
Yes, well, this is going up on our app. It's streaming live, and then it's going to be viewable. As soon as it ends, it processes, takes about an hour, and then it's up as a video. But what I was saying is, boy, they do a docu-series, which was very riveting on WeWork. They did a docu-series very riveting on called Super Pumped, about the rise of Uber. Why not a docu-series on this? The question is, who's going to play us? That's the only thing. All right. I think we've got Anna de Armas going to play you, Carla Cabral. Okay. Give us your final thoughts. We can have a little humor, even though it's a very serious and tragic subject. It's okay, I think, sometimes to laugh. I know Wayne has a great sense of humor. Go ahead.
Yeah, on behalf of Wayne Hsiung and Paul Picklesimer, I really want to extend all of our gratitude and on behalf of all the animals that are being kept in these horrific factory farms. Again, I want to extend our extreme gratitude for your coverage and for everybody's support. I would like to ask everybody if you can go to hashtag Smithfield Trial. You can get instant updates on what's going on. And please, everybody, go to righttorescue.com and you can get even more information about this. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Carla Cabral. And I have to say, I'm putting it up there right now, Smithfield Trial. There we go. That is the hashtag. And righttorescue.com, right? Okay, thank you for joining us. Carla, I really hope you can join us again tomorrow, okay? We are continuing and as somebody said, this coverage is the only coverage of this sort happening. I mean, I think this should be on CNN and MSNBC and, yes, even Fox News and the New York Times and the New York Post and the Washington Post, but it's not. So we're doing it, and it's going to take a village of caring people to create alternate networks. Okay, a network is a fancy word for a production company with a distribution pipeline to an audience. We have that potential, and together we can have a very powerful, we can make this global streaming network very powerful indeed. But the first step is for you to download it. Please download Unchained TV on your phone or on your TV via your Apple TV device, your Amazon Fire Stick, or your Roku device, or just go to UnchainedTV.com and you can view it online. I want to thank you. Carla, can you join us again tomorrow? You were fantastic.
Thank you. I will do my best. Either myself or somebody else from Direct Action Everywhere who is on site will be here. Thank you.
All right. Well, you're getting an A+ for your commentary and for being nimble on your feet when you were told to leave the area. You remained live. Now you're driving. I don't know where you are, driving to the Nevada border or something, but you're staying live. So thank you so much. Yes, everybody's like, bring Carla back. Okay. You've got a fan base already. Thank you so much, Donny Moss, my dear friend in New York, founder of the amazing TheirTurn.net. And Mick Davoudian here in Los Angeles, avid trial watcher, and full disclosure, dear friends all, thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific, 12 Mountain, 2 p.m. Eastern for more continuing trial coverage. We're going to stay every day here on Unchained TV. We are going to continue our coverage every single day. Bye.